Hey, what's up YouTube? Well, I wanted to make this video because a couple of years ago I made a video about greasing your mower deck spindles on consumer grade lawnmowers. And I said in my opinion it's a waste of time. And after a couple of years went by, one of my viewers directed me to another video made by a guy named Woodchuck Russ, where he did it, and in his video it kind of looked a little suspect to me, just the way things were. But you know, he commented that maybe I should try it for myself, and I would like to clarify that I have done this for myself in the past quite a few times. But when I did it, it was on old spindles that were wore out, making noise, and I didn't have much luck with it. When I would do it, the grease would come out around the bearing and would not go into the bearing. Maybe it was because the spindle assembly was old and wore out, whatever the case may be. So I told him I would make a video, and if the results were that he was right, I would post that too. Well, he was right. Grease does enter the bearings. I went and bought a brand new spindle. Didn't have any old ones laying around. So bought a brand new one. I made a video, which you're going to see here in a minute, of me greasing it. And grease did go into the bearing. Although my results were unfavorable. By the time grease finally made it through the bearing, it blew the seal out. So I'll admit that I was wrong. Grease will go into a bearing. Maybe the seals on my bearings that I tried in the past were, well, they were pretty hard. The new seals on the new spindle were nice and soft and pliable. I think that has a lot to do with it. So anyways, just making this video to admit that I was incorrect about the grease going into the bearings. Yeah, I did take down my other two videos. Because, you know, obviously I don't want to have misinformation. But I still think at the end of the day, in my opinion, I think you're still better off if there was a good method to keeping your sealed bearings maintained properly. I think your best bet is maybe every other year, every couple of years, just break the spindles apart, pop the seals off, clean all the old grease out, put some fresh grease in there. Because I don't believe it's a good thing to have a sealed bearing packed full of grease. And I got a couple pages here that highlight, you know, how much grease is enough grease in a sealed bearing. And they tell you that if you have too much grease in a sealed bearing, it is a bad thing to have a bearing over-greased. It'll cause it to run hotter. The rolling resistance will be much higher, and it could be premature wear on your bearings. So if you'd like to look up the articles for yourself and check them out, okay, you can see this one right here, machinerylubrication.com. That's the link number. And, you know, it goes all over, you know, there being too much grease in a bearing. I'm not going to bore you too much with that. So this is another one, big mistakes of bearing lubrication. There's the web address. And there's more articles, but I'm not gonna drag it out on this. There is a point where there's enough grease in a bearing, and then there's a point where there's too much grease in a bearing. And the thing that I don't like about pumping the spindle full of grease like that is that there's no way, in my opinion, to know exactly how much grease you're putting into that bearing, because you have to pump it until it starts coming out of the seal, which means at that point it's like 100% full. So in my opinion, that's twofold. But hey, everybody's got their own opinions, and I'm just here to set the record straight. And at the end of the day, in my opinion, I kind of still think that greasing your mower spindles is kind of a waste of time, because it's going to put too much grease into the bearing. There's no room for expansion, and they're also designed to run a certain amount of hours. You can Google it for yourself. How long should a residential lawnmower last? Regular riding mower last? They are designed to be run for about 200 to 300 hours. The average person, they say, uses about 25 hours a year on their machine. So that's how they get the 8 to 10 years. In my experience, all the mower decks that I've worked on are past 10 years old, is when they start failing, when they start making noise and everything else. So you'll see in my video in just a minute that, it took a lot of grease just to fill up the spindle assembly. I think it was like 130, 140 pumps, something like that. Excuse me. Then I had a seal blowout. And then I also tried, after I cleaned it all up, put it back together, since I had it there, I figured, well, why not test where other people on YouTube say you drill a little pilot hole in there for pressure relief, and then that will be, keep your spindle from being over-pressurized and blowing the seals out. So I drilled a little pilot hole in there, and then no grease got into the bearing. Because as Woodchuck Russ stated in his description, grease guns do create quite a bit of pressure. I've seen them, go to 10,000 psi. So yeah, it's going to push past something. Okay, like I stated earlier, the old spindles I worked on, it came out around the surface where the bearing and the spindle itself were. But the grease is going to find a way out somewhere. So, it is what it is. So, I'm going to cut to the video I just made showing me greasing the mower spindle. Alright, YouTube, here we are, second half. I got everything laid out on the table, and we're going to go ahead and do this thing. As you can see, we're opening it up right here on camera. Knife's a bit dull. Got the nut and bolt for the spindle down here. Try to keep this as quick as I can. Okay. So as you can see, there's no grease fitting in here. So we're going to put one in here. I really don't care about getting grease shavings inside of here, because I'm not going to be using this spindle. I only bought this to make this video with. Tap our hole. Get it as straight as possible. Tap is a bit old. The teeth are a little dull on it, but it should do the trick for what we need here, hopefully. Probably going to inspire me to go buy a new tap after this. Did a horrible job. Get this grease fit in there. I realize this is not the best tap job, but we're trying to get it just for demonstration purposes. Alright, so got a brand new spindle sitting here. Got a fitting in there, even though it's not that great. I'll be the first to admit it's pretty horrible, actually. Sorry about that. My battery died, but you can see right where I left off. Hasn't been touched. Everything's still the way, you know, it was just a second ago. Let's go ahead and grease this thing up. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 57, 58, 59, 60. 70. There's 70 pumps right there. Ain't nothing coming out yet. There's 80 pumps. Nothing coming out yet. There's 90 pumps of grease. Nothing coming out yet. That's 100. Nothing coming out yet. That's 110. Nothing coming out yet. $120. Alright, we got grease coming out. Got grease coming out. That's 120 pumps of grease later. Alright. So as you can see, I pretty much tapped it in the middle. You know, we'll go ahead and we'll pump it a little more till it comes out the top too. We'll give it a fair chance here. We'll come out the top. Okay. Alright. Grease coming out the top. As you can see there. So now, we're going to tear this thing apart. Open it up. There's a mess everywhere already. That's okay. Alright. See if I can hold this enough. Get that off of there. Shouldn't be too bad because it ain't been tightened down yet. grab a hold of this thing. Okay. Gnats. Okay. Alright. Let's check it out. This one had a felt seal on there. I haven't seen that before. Some kind of fiber seal around the shaft. Alright, now look at there. I see a problem already. You guys see it on camera? Look what happened. The seal blew out right here in the bottom. Seal blew out. Okay. Now I said earlier that either you're going to blow the seal out or it's not going to come through there. Well, now you just saw for yourself the seal blew out. So that ain't good. If you were to just grease these spindles until you saw grease coming out, well, you just blew your seal off your spindle. Okay. Got to understand, if you're putting grease in, it's got to come back out. Alright, there you see it. There's red grease that I just pumped in there. So, I'll be a man of my word, and I'll say that yes, if you pump grease in your spindles, it will come through. So I do stand corrected. But there is a problem though. Too much grease, you just saw for yourself, pop this seal out of here. And now these bearings are over greased. As soon as this expands, it's going to push more grease out. So, is that really going to be helpful at all? I don't think so. Because the problem is, you see other YouTube videos, they tell you can put a fitting on here like that, but then you need to drill a hole in there for the excess grease to come out because you don't want it to be pressurized. Well, all y'all just saw live on camera that the only way to get the grease to push through is you have to over pressurize. So how are you going to put that much pressure in there to get the grease to push through the bearings if there's a hole drilled in there for the excess grease to come out? The pressure will never get high enough to push through there. And now, like you saw, it just blew the seal out of this bottom bearing. So that's absolutely no good at all. I mean, this shaft was on there. You guys saw it was on there. And I just tapped it out. And the seal was loose because it had been blown out. I mean, maybe that was because I didn't stop whenever I saw the grease coming. We pumped it up enough to get it to come out the top. But still, it blew the seals out. So what good is that? Are you going to take your spindle assembly and take it apart every time you grease it to make sure that the grease didn't push out the seals? You know, you got to remember, up here you're going to have your pulley up here. How are you going to check and see if that seal got pushed out? So I stand corrected for everybody to see that, hold on, that everybody saw live on camera. Yes, you can fill your spindles full of grease and it'll get into the bearings, but the only way to do it is to over pressurize the spindle and blow the seal out, just like I did. So there you go. This is the last video I'm going to make on the subject. You know, as you can see clearly, this bottom bearing was a sealed bearing. Okay, it's not like the John Deere. We'll go ahead and we'll tap it out. We'll tap it out for you to see. Okay. As you can see, look, it's a sealed bearing. The only ones I've ever seen that have the metal shield on this side are the John Deeres. They got a metal shield on this side which allows grease to get in. But not this one. This is just a regular old, that's like a Craftsman, Murray, AYP, just run-of-the-mill spindle I bought brand new just to do this video with. So, I stand corrected, like I said I would. I have done this in the past on old spindles that are rusted, and the grease never got into the bearings. I bought this spindle brand new just for this video to see what would happen, and while the grease did push into the bearings, it blew the seal out. So I'm not really sure what good that's going to do, you know. And before anybody starts commenting, well, you just don't put that much grease in there. Well, then explain to me how much grease should go in there, because there's no hole in here for the grease pressure to get out. So now that we all saw it, how about let's just test that, okay? Let me put this back together. We'll drill a little pilot hole in there for the excess pressure, and we'll see if anything will go through with the weep hole in there. We might as well cover all the bases right now. Alright? So let me get a rag, let me clean this up, and I'll be right back. Alright guys, we got it all set up. Got the bearings cleaned out, got all the grease out of them. We're going to snap the seals back in. I'm going to drill a vent hole right here, got a tiny bit. Alright, and we're going to see now what these other people say by drilling a vent hole in it, if it still lets the grease get in the bearings. Alright. Vent in there. Oh man, I just stuck my thumb in the grease. Nice. Alright, snap our seals back in. Okay. Look at all that grease just squished out of there just from me trying to put the bearing back in there. Okay. Hopefully that don't mess up our test results. We'll go ahead and check it right here on camera. Now you can see there ain't no grease got in the bearings. I would like to add, note, even with a smaller pick, you still damage the seal every time you open this thing. So another reason I don't like doing it. Okay, let's get our bigger bottom bearing in there. Okay. Alright. Let's put our shaft back in. Okay. Good to go there. What in the world? That ain't really gonna matter. Just leave that off there. Okay. So let's go for some more greasing, alright? So we got our weep hole up here. Got grease everywhere. Like I said, when you do this, this makes a daggum mess everywhere. Let's put our grease gun back on here. Alright. 2, 3, 4, 6, 10, 11, 12, 13, 16, 17. Alright, obviously the cavity's full now. You see it shooting out. As soon as I put a pump in, it's shooting it right back out. So there's no point in even going any further. Now we got a hellacious mess. I'm really got to clean off my work table now because I can't be getting grease all over everything whenever I'm working on stuff. Okay, so let's take these seals out and see how much grease got into these bearings. Now we got a weep hole in there. Okay. None. Can you see? Move. You see on the camera, look, we didn't have nothing pushed through. Nothing. Okay. Check this one. Nothing. Okay. No grease pushed through. So, to conclude my video, I will apologize for saying that greasing your mower spindles, the grease won't get into the bearings, because if you put enough pressure in there, yes, it will force it past the seals to get into the bearings. But as you saw, just like I said would happen, the seal blew out. So that ain't no good. It ain't no good when your seal blows out. As you can see by our test of the weep hole that some people say to put in there once you put a grease fitting in there, well, then that won't let any grease in the bearings because the seals keep the grease out. You know, let's just go ahead and we'll be thorough on this. I'll pop the bearings back out and we'll see if maybe it just got past the first seal and didn't get to the other side of the bearing, because this side of the bearing is dry. Alright, let's see if possibly the grease maybe just got onto one side of the bearing. Okay. See if the grease got onto one side of the bearing. Nope, dry as a bone. See that? Nothing on the inside of this bearing. So it didn't even make it past the first seal. Just to be thorough here, we'll do this other one. Okay. Okay. Nothing. No grease whatsoever. So by putting a weep hole in the spindle, so that it doesn't pressurize enough to blow the seals out. It also will not allow grease to get in the bearings at all. You saw for yourself on camera.